mom had to help me in the 3rd grade with a drawing exercise that basically was draw a happy face and draw a sad face. And I remember not knowing how to do it. My mom sat down with me. She saw that I had been sitting there for a while. And she was like, why don't you try this? And she drew 2 circles. And in one, she put 2 dots and a smile. In the other, she put 2 dots and a frown. And I remember my little 3rd grade brain, my mind was blown. And I remember thinking, I want to learn how to draw like a great artist like my mom is. Good mythology is so far-fetched that there's no way you could have made it up. So it has to come from somewhere, which makes it amazing. Artists have always sort of referenced mythology like Christianity, which I call white people's mythology. I reference Ojibwe mythology, which is something that I learned about in my adult years because I didn't really grow up with it. I grew up in the Twin Cities, even though my family, both my parents are from the Red Lake Ojibwe Reservation. Growing up in the Twin Cities, it was more like we were kind of like just urban brown people. I never knew about the living, breathing, storytelling world that exists for the Anishinaabe culture. That was something that I was introduced to in my artwork. It was almost like through my artwork, I became a productive member of my tribe. Yeah, this is a little spray paint mess that I made a few years back. I always think about identity, and I'll take the different chunks that would make a character who they are, and I'll just like build them, you know, like you would build a robot or Voltron or something. So this mask, you know, with this animal, and this suit or dress, you know, with these shoes, boom, that's who that person is. It's kind of a mix between, I would say, the things that I like in contemporary, like current culture, and just like a sprinkle of Ojibwe perspective, sometimes like Ojibwe mythology. Maybe my brain just works that way, you know, like if there's an image, there's got to be a story. You could hear their pounding steps and their shrieks. Nanabuju pushed his legs to the limits of their speed. The stones behind Nanabuju sank, pitching the Wendigos into the water. The Wendigos thrashed the water while trying to stay afloat. This is story time for Minnow. How about you hang out up here? Is he waking up?
Yeah, he's waking up. He loves story time.
Little guy, I can see him moving around in there. During the first year of the pandemic in 2020, we were living in central Minnesota, which is heavily Paul Bunyan country. Paul Bunyan is, in my eyes, sort of this character that was created to make the land grab and resource grab that has happened historically in Minnesota and displaced tribes, to make it look noble, to give it a noble face. So on the grave of the giant is the scene of an Ojibwe couple harvesting wild rice, which is something that's considered by a lot of people synonymous with Anishinaabe and Ojibwe identity. And underneath the water is the corpse of Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox. Also, I wanted to give a nod to Patrick DeJarly. He worked on the design for the Land O'Lakes Butterbox. Patrick DeJarly was a member of the Red Lake Band of Ojibwe, where my family is from. DeJarly influenced me because we had a print of his work in our house when I was a kid. DeJarly's style was different. You know, it was kind of cubic. He wasn't paying attention to proportions, you know, of the human anatomy and proper placement of joints and stuff like that. He was just making art. To me, that was really interesting, and it was freeing. He really kind of just inspired me, you know, to pursue the kind of artwork that I do today. Painting is just what I know, but I love creating digitally, working on a tablet, animating in animation software, which is mostly for my own amusement. But the paintings themselves sometimes feel like they're moving, and it's just too tempting for me sometimes to not actually make the move. The lighthouse is actually a large-scale painting. I based the painting on a historical painting called Washington Crosses the Delaware, depicting George Washington as like this fearless leader, you know, but if you think about what was happening in indigenous communities, he just seems like a big hamburglar, you know, just like a clown. You see a woman pregnant, probably thinking about the future, and is the only one in the painting that actually sees the lighthouse, you know, in the stormy waters that they're in. Animation wasn't always friendly to cultures outside of mainstream culture. You know, like I remember seeing Bugs Bunny shooting Indians by, you know, like huge numbers and singing about it. 1 little, 2 little, 3 little Indians.
4 little, 5 little, 6 little Indians. Sorry, that one was a half-breed.
These are the cartoons that I was, on Saturday mornings, I'd be sitting there as a little kid watching, right? You know, I like to reference those older cartoons in my paintings and kind of make them not sacred, make them a little sketchy, kind of grimy. I thought it'd be cool to take 3 stories that I heard in my travels in northern Minnesota and adapt them. So this is one of the comps from Manifesto. Each piece, like this piece right here, is for the Mishu-Biju, the Great Lynx, which is said to be an inhabitant of the Great Lakes, a protector of the water. It's going to be installed at the Minneapolis International Airport. I'm really excited about how much wall space Manifesto is going to take up. It's ultimately like doing a digital kind of mural. Here you go, Martin.
Okay.
It's all about the illusion. You know what I mean? It's about the illusion of this thing being a part of that wall. It's about the illusion of this thing, I guess, being a component of that tunnel. Otherwise, it just feels like you're looking at a TV screen. See right here, we gotta line up those cracks of the animation to match the cracks of the case. I was starting to think we were almost done for the day, but I think that's probably gonna take us a little while. It's not like I really sit down knowing exactly how it's going to go. I'm a little nervous about the technical side of figuring that out. I'd imagine it's like jumping out of a plane, you know, like you just have to jump and then later you'll find out if your parachute works. The people that fly that concourse, you know, they fly into northern Minnesota, which is where the 7 Ojibwe nations are located. And they're probably going to see Ojibwe language around, you know, some of the smaller cities up here. And that might prepare them, you know, for what they're about to see.
Nishtana Ashi Bejik Nishtana Ashi Nish Nishtana Ashi Niswe.
In the last decade or so, I've been witness to a great movement of contemporary Indigenous artwork. And I think it's a sign that culture, you know, evolves and exists in contemporary times, which is what I'm interested in. There's a certain responsibility that I feel to say something about our time. If not to say anything profound, to at least say, this is how it was when I was here. Hopefully that will leave a better place for my son to stand, you know, when he's my age. And those building blocks will leave a much better place for his kids to stand.